Hey guys, tonight we begin somewhere high above the sea, so high that the air thins out like an excuse, and the clouds don't drift past. You walk through them. You're standing in the Andes, wrapped in the kind of chill that seeps through layers of clothing and into your teeth, where the night air drops below freezing and the sun comes back each day like it's not completely sure why it bothers. You're here to meet some very patient people. People who spent generations learning how to grow a stubborn little crop in an even more stubborn place. People who didn't have tractors or thermometers or satellites, but somehow figured out how to make a living farm on the side of a mountain using just dirt, sunlight, and supernatural levels of chill. Welcome to the world of ancient potato farming. You probably won't survive this one. Not because it's dangerous, oh no. It's just so gently brilliant, so slow-paced, and so free of unnecessary drama that your brain might actually start to hum at a lower frequency. We're about to enter a space where knowledge travels by foot, innovation looks like a rock pile, and the only urgent thing is whether the clouds feel frosty today. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments your location and local time. I love seeing where in the world you're tuning in from to fall asleep to old knowledge and soft stories. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You start walking along a narrow trail carved into the spine of the Andes. Below you, thousands of feet down, are glacial streams that cut through the valleys like silver threads. Above you, more mountain, more cloud, more wind that somehow feels both ancient and completely disinterested in your plans. This is the kind of place where your phone loses signal, your lungs file complaints, and your muscles give you that "I told you so" soreness. But it's also the kind of place where a single hill might contain hundreds of varieties of potatoes. Different sizes, shapes, colors, tastes, even purposes. You crest a ridge and find yourself overlooking a series of terraced fields. They cascade down the slope in long, curved layers like natural amphitheaters, each one edged in stones that glint faintly in the afternoon light. There's no tractor, no drip irrigation, no synthetic fertilizer. And yet somehow it all works. Mainstream science reminder: the Andes is the birthplace of the potato. Long before it reached Europe, or your plate of fries, it was cultivated here by indigenous Andean cultures over 7,000 years ago. The region's farmers domesticated thousands of potato varieties, each suited to specific altitudes, microclimates, and even soil types. The biodiversity is astonishing and intentional. You pause beside one of the terraces where a farmer in a worn wool poncho is carefully turning the soil by hand with a foot plow that hasn't changed in centuries. He greets you with a nod and a half smile, then goes right back to it. He's not in a rush, because here time is measured in seasons, not seconds. You kneel to examine the earth. It's darker than you expect. Rich, alive. You run your fingers through it and it feels soft but strong, like it remembers what it's meant to do. The farmer points to the horizon, where clouds are gathering over a distant peak. "No frost tonight," he says in a language older than maps. You don't know how he knows that, but you believe him. A quirky insight: some Andean farmers are known to read weather signs by observing tiny changes in the behavior of insects, alpacas, or even the color of distant clouds. They've developed their own hyper-local forecasting systems, passed down orally, that rival modern weather models in accuracy, at least for their fields. You sit on a rock as the sun dips behind the ridge, casting long shadows across the potato rows. Scientists still argue whether traditional knowledge like this counts as science. Some say it's anecdotal, unverified. Others say it's empirical, tested through generations of observation and adaptation. What they all agree on, it works. You wrap your shawl tighter as the wind picks up. And you realize the mountain hasn't been tamed. It's been understood, quietly, carefully, without drama. And somehow that's even more impressive. You wake up early, the kind of early that doesn't involve alarms or calendars, just that strange primal feeling that the mountain is about to do something, and you should probably be awake for it. The sky is still gray, not with rain, just with altitude. A sort of moody ceiling that hovers about 20 feet above your head. A soft wind stirs the tall ichu grass around your feet, and somewhere in the valley below, a dog barks once and then decides it's not worth the effort. Your guide for today is already awake, chewing coca leaves like gum, and smiling with eyes that have seen 100 harvests. He gestures for you to follow him, not with words, just a nod and a motion. Language here is optional. Potatoes are fluent in silence. You walk through fields that seem haphazard at first glance. Potatoes growing next to quinoa, next to some plant you don't even recognize. But then you realize it's all intentional. Companion planting, natural pest management, nutrient balancing. Thousands of years before terms like permaculture were a TED Talk, these farmers were practicing it without the slideshows. He crouches down and gently digs up a potato, not with tools, with bare hands. The tuber emerges like it's being unwrapped from the earth, coated in fine soil, surprisingly clean. You look at it, a little underwhelmed. It's a potato. You've seen a potato before. He holds it like it's a treasure, because it is. You see, in this part of the Andes, people don't just grow potatoes, they curate them. They've developed over 4,000 distinct varieties, and some families guard their lines like heirlooms. One potato might be for weddings, another for funerals. Some are only eaten during festivals or used in ceremonial exchanges. This is less farming and more potato diplomacy. Mainstream science fact. According to modern agricultural research, the genetic diversity of potatoes in the Andes is among the richest of any food crop in the world. This diversity is key to resistance against disease, pests, and climate variability. It's nature's insurance policy, and it's been maintained by small-scale farmers, not laboratories. Your guide cuts the potato open. The inside is purple. Like shockingly purple. You blink. He shrugs and pops a raw slice into his mouth. You cautiously do the same. It's bitter, like weirdly bitter. He laughs at your reaction, then points to a small, seemingly random pile of stones nearby. You realize it's a boundary marker, not for land, but for varieties, a kind of invisible library system. This zone is for bitter potatoes. Over there, the buttery ones. Over the ridge, the ones with red flesh used in certain rituals you're probably not ready for. Scientists still argue whether this kind of localized, unrecorded knowledge can be classified as scientific taxonomy. It doesn't follow the Linnaean system. There are no Latin names. And yet somehow everyone here knows exactly what everything is, when to plant it, and what it's good for. You start to suspect they might be onto something. You ask your guide how he keeps track of them all. He just smiles. You watch a young boy run past with a sack of freshly dug potatoes and yell something in Quechua that probably means, "Don't drop them again." The guide tells you that kids learn the varieties by taste, texture, and smell before they can write. It's not school, it's survival. Fringe tidbit. In some Andean communities, potato taste tests are used in matchmaking. A girl might test a suitor by how well he can identify potatoes blindfolded. Apparently, if you can't tell your Papa Lisa from your Papa Coochie, you're not ready for a relationship. Harsh but fair. You sit on a terrace edge and look out across the valley. It's not flat, it's not neat, but it's alive. Every slope is a decision, every crop a memory. This isn't farming like you know it. This is memory work, a generational conversation between people and plants. And in a world obsessed with speed, scale, and productivity, there's something profoundly restful about watching someone spend 5 minutes examining a single potato like it holds the secrets of the universe. Because in a way it does. Now you're climbing, not metaphorically, literally. Your calves are burning, your breathing sounds like a winded accordion, and your guide, who is easily 3 times your age, is barely sweating. He pauses every so often, not to rest, but to let you catch up, which somehow feels more insulting. You reach what looks like the edge of a cliff, but it's not. It's another field, carved like a shelf into the side of the mountain. Welcome to high-altitude farming, where gravity's a jerk, oxygen is optional, and everything still somehow grows. You are now standing at over 13,000 feet above sea level. That's higher than most commercial flights would feel comfortable letting you walk around. And yet, under your feet, potatoes, rows of them, neat, organized, quietly thriving. Mainstream science fact: potatoes can grow at extreme altitudes, often up to 4,200 meters, 800 feet. In these conditions, the UV radiation is intense, the nights drop below freezing, and rainfall is unpredictable. But certain potato species not only survive, they're designed for it. Evolution meets ingenuity. You ask your guide a little too breathlessly, "Why here? Why not somewhere easier?" He shrugs, then says something simple that sticks with you. The mountain is stable. It does not flood. It gives time. You get the feeling this is about more than just dirt. He shows you how they select planting spots, not just by elevation, but by slope direction, rock warmth, and even how the morning light hits a patch of land. Some fields are rotated not yearly, but every decade. Others are only used once in a generation. It's slow, intentional, and, let's be honest, completely opposite of how modern agriculture functions. Quirky tidbit: some Andean farmers believe that certain hillsides have personalities. A grumpy slope won't yield well. A generous one will grow anything. So they treat their land like moody relatives, give it space, gifts, time to recover, and occasionally talk to it. You sit and drink from a gourd filled with something sweet and mildly suspicious. Your guide doesn't explain what it is. You drink it anyway. Below in the valley, you can see small specks moving. Other farmers, other families, some hauling harvests on their backs, others tending to llamas. Everything is small but connected. No huge machines, no neon green fertilizer drums, just woven bags, wooden tools, and a tempo that matches the mountain's heartbeat. Scientists still argue whether this qualifies as an advanced system. It doesn't look modern, it doesn't scale, but it survives droughts, floods, plagues, even colonial invasions. That kind of durability doesn't happen by accident. You start to notice how the terraces are built, not just stacked stones, but angled in a way that prevents erosion. The paths curve with the contours of the land. Water channels are invisible until you realize every heavy rain gets quietly redirected, like a polite decline at a party. You ask your guide if he ever worries about losing all this knowledge. He doesn't answer with words. Instead, he points to a child, no more than 8, planting beside his grandmother, mimicking every motion with exaggerated care. Then he smiles. You watch them for a while, the tiny hands digging where they're told, pressing seeds into soil that's been planted in 1,000 times before. It feels ancient and immediate all at once. And for a moment, the mountain doesn't seem harsh. It seems shared, a soft partnership between human and stone. Not dominance, not extraction, just quiet cooperation. By the time you return to the village, if you can even call it that, you're pretty sure your thighs have formed an alliance against you. The tiny homes are scattered along the hillside like leftover puzzle pieces, their walls made of stone and adobe, their roofs thatched or tiled with whatever happened to be handy and vaguely waterproof. Chickens stroll with zero urgency. A dog looks up, judges you, and decides you're not worth barking at. You duck into one of the houses, no electricity, no plumbing, but it smells like wood smoke, roasted tubers, and something faintly herbal, like mountain tea laced with ambition. Inside, 3 generations are sorting potatoes. Not metaphorically, literally, piles of them. Some as big as apples, others the size of marbles. Round, knobby, red, yellow, blue, black. Colors that feel illegally vibrant for something pulled out of the ground. A grandmother inspects them one by one with the same seriousness most people reserve for diamonds. She tosses a few into a bowl, sets some aside for drying, and sets others in a basket labeled with a woven symbol you can't quite decipher. Mainstream science fact: in the Andean highlands, potatoes are not just food. They're categorized by taste, texture, cooking method, ceremonial use, and even spiritual significance. Some are best boiled, others freeze-dried into chuño, a traditional method of preservation that dates back over 1,000 years. You try not to stare, but one potato in particular catches your eye. It's shaped vaguely like a llama. You point it out. The middle-aged man holding it shrugs and says, "Good omen. This one's for planting." You realize there's a language here spoken entirely in tuber. The quirky part? They let alpacas help decide where to plant. Seriously, some herders observe where alpacas prefer to rest or graze, believing those spots indicate ideal soil moisture or microclimates. So if an alpaca falls asleep in your field, congratulations, you've just earned nature's seal of approval. You sit on a woven mat, legs crossed, as someone hands you a bowl of soup. Potato-based, obviously, but there's also a floating chunk of something that might be cheese, and a green herb you're told is good for heart clarity, whatever that means. You slurp politely. Across from you, a child is drawing in the dirt with a stick, sketching out something that might be a mountain or might be a lizard. Either way, it's better than your handwriting. You ask about schooling. The answer is gently ambiguous. Some kids go to government schools down the mountain if the road isn't washed out. Others learn right here how to read weather from the wind, how to count crop rows by moonlight, how to know when the land is tired. Scientists still argue whether this kind of informal education qualifies as curriculum. It doesn't come with certificates, no standardized tests, but it produces young farmers who can recognize 200 potato varieties by touch alone. Try putting that on a resume. A woman enters carrying a basket of what you assume are more potatoes, but no, they're tools. Dozens of them, all handmade, each with a slightly different blade, handle, or curve. One for digging, one for scraping, one for angry soil, as she puts it with a chuckle. She hands you one and says, "You try." You do. It's terrible. Your wrist cramps, you dig too deep, and the potato you pull up is shaped like failure. She takes the tool back, gives you a sympathetic smile, and goes right back to it with practiced ease. No judgment, just a quiet acknowledgement that you're from a world that forgot how to use its hands. Fringe tidbit. Some researchers believe tool designs in the Andes haven't changed for nearly a millennium. And that's not due to a lack of innovation. It's because the tools already work perfectly. In fact, a few are optimized for people who are right-handed in the morning and left-handed in the evening. Try beating that with your ergonomic garden trowel. As the evening light fades, you realize something odd. No one is in a hurry. The work happens when it happens. Meals are shared when the group is ready. Conversations stretch into silence, and silences stretch into warmth. You've entered potato time, and it is absurdly soothing. The night in the Andes doesn't fall so much as it quietly tucks you in. 1 minute you're watching shadows grow long across the terrace walls, and the next stars have spilled themselves across the sky like a bucket knocked over by a careless god. You're staying in one of the homes. The mattress is made of straw, the blanket woven from alpaca wool, and the pillow is suspiciously potato-shaped. You decide not to ask. A small fire crackles in a clay hearth. No TV, no buzzing lights. Just the sound of wind nudging the door and someone, somewhere, whistling softly, a lullaby for crops maybe. You lie back and stare at the wooden beams of the ceiling, which somehow seem older than the walls holding them up. Tomorrow, you're told, you'll visit the Waru Waru. You murmur, the what? Your host laughs. You'll see. Mainstream science fact. Waru Waru are ancient raised bed agricultural systems built with canals and mounds designed to protect crops from frost and flooding. The technique dates back over 2,000 years and was used by pre-Incan civilizations. It's brilliant, and it's making a comeback. The next morning, after a breakfast of fried dough, thick tea, and of course, boiled potatoes, you're sensing a pattern. You hike out past the last house, the last stone fence, and the last lingering goat. And there they are. Long mounds of earth, like someone raked the mountainside into lines. Between them, narrow trenches filled with water that reflect the sky. You look at your guide, then at the trenches, and say what everyone says. Looks like someone left the rice paddies up too high. He chuckles. Waru Waru aren't for rice. They're for potatoes, quinoa, and other high-altitude crops that need insulation against the cold. The raised beds stay warmer at night, while the water in the trenches absorbs sunlight during the day and slowly releases it after dark, acting like a thermal blanket. Also, if it floods, the water simply rises in the trenches, not on the crops. You get a demonstration. Your guide walks out onto a bed, balanced, sure-footed, and starts digging. The soil is rich, dark, alive. You step onto it and promptly sink half an inch. It's like standing on a giant brownie. He says these beds are rotated every few years. Some are left to rest and become bird sanctuaries. Others are drained and used as temporary grazing fields. The entire system is elastic, adapting to whatever the mountain decides to throw that year. Fringe tidbit. Some believe Waru Waru fields generate their own microclimate, attracting clouds and affecting local weather patterns. While not universally accepted, farmers have noticed more morning mist and gentler rains around maintained beds. Scientists still argue whether that's correlation or causation, or if the mountain's just showing off. You help him plant a few rows, or try. Your furrow is wobbly, your spacing is off, and your potato disappears into the soil like it's trying to escape your incompetence. He pats your shoulder. You both silently agree to never speak of this again. As you rest by the edge of a trench, you notice frogs. Dozens of them. Tiny, greenish, vaguely annoyed looking. Your guide tells you they help control pests, and their croaking is a sign of healthy water. You sit, toes in the canal, and think about farming back home. Massive machines, chemical sprays, GPS-plotted fields. And here, a frog in a ditch in a mountain, And somehow the yield is stable, the variety is unmatched, and the ecosystem seems content. There's no drama, no viral farming hacks, just slow, attentive work and the belief that if you do right by the land won't eat you in your sleep. You ask if Warawara were ever abandoned. He nods. The Spanish didn't get them, called them primitive, so they stopped. And for centuries, this knowledge nearly vanished. But now, locals, researchers, and even city governments are reviving them, not as nostalgia, but as climate resilience, which feels strangely hopeful. You stare at the mountain. It says nothing. Because as you're starting to learn, it never needed to. You're sitting on a sun-warmed stone, watching a potato being freeze-dried by the sky. Let that sink in. Not a machine, not a freezer unit, just a humble potato laid out on a woven mat, patiently being shriveled by the cold, dry Andean night. Beside it, a half-dozen more lie in various stages of transformation. Frozen, shriveled, stomped. Yes, stomped. You'll get to that in a second. Your host calls this chuño, mainstream science fact. Chuño is a traditional Andean method of preserving potatoes that involves freezing them overnight in high-altitude conditions, then drying them under the sun for several days. The process removes moisture and locks in nutrients, creating a shelf-stable food that can last for years. The trick? Leave the potatoes out overnight. Let the bitter cold freeze them solid. Then in the morning, step on them. Literally. You take off your shoes, roll up your pants, and join the barefoot brigade in stomping potatoes. It's not violent, it's rhythmic, almost meditative. You press out the water, squeeze out the past, and what's left behind is a little gray puck that might outlive your career plans. It's oddly satisfying. A woman beside you hums as she works. She says chuño was what kept families alive during famines, war, and times when even the goats gave up. She laughs at her own joke. You laugh too, slightly nervous about the goat part. The quirky part? Some families bury chuño in ceremonial pits, believing the process strengthens not only the food but the family bond. Chuño isn't just preserved, it's blessed. Scientists still argue whether the nutritional value holds up. Some studies say yes, others suggest minor degradation. But all agree, few foods endure this long without rotting, molding, or getting hijacked by lab-grown rivals. After the stomping session, you're handed a bowl of chuño futi, rehydrated chuño, sautéed with herbs, cheese, and sometimes a fried egg if the hens are generous that day. The texture is chewy, earthy, ghostly, like eating a memory. You chew slowly. Your guide mentions that ancient Andean civilizations used chuño as currency, rations, even offerings to the gods. In one remote village, they still feed it to newborns on their first birthday, to connect them with the past, to ground them, both literally and emotionally. And you thought your pantry was meaningful because it had 3 kinds of oat milk. After lunch, you wander uphill to the communal drying field. Mats are everywhere, some with potatoes, others with herbs, beans, and bright yellow corn. But it's the chuño piles that catch your eye. Rows and rows, like a minimalist sculpture garden curated by survivalists. A kid runs past holding a slingshot. He pauses, eyes your camera, and then casually tosses a chuño puck into the air. It lands with a satisfying thud. "We play freeze rock baseball," he says in Spanish, smiling. "Very slow game." You think about the freeze dryers used in biotech labs, expensive vacuum chambers, and nitrogen gas. And here, a child in a glacier and a sky that doesn't forgive. One potato, one method, 1,000 years of sleep-proof food. You realize it's not just preservation, it's time travel. A potato frozen in 2025 could be eaten in 2035, or offered at a wedding, or sent as a gift. One woman even told you she keeps a chuño made by her grandmother just to remember what her hands felt like. You look down at your own hands, soft, moisturized, unaccustomed to cold dirt. You press your thumb into a fresh chuño and feel it give just slightly. It's like touching a relic, pliable yet eternal. And suddenly you understand the quiet pride that comes with making something that endures. Not because it's perfect, but because it survived. You're now watching a llama traffic jam. It's exactly as chaotic and adorable as it sounds. 5 or 6 llamas blocking a narrow stone path, refusing to move because one of them has stopped to stare at a butterfly. The herder sighs. You sigh. The butterfly flutters away, unbothered by your collective impatience. Eventually, everyone moves again, and you continue your trek toward a small village nestled just below a glacial ridge. Today's topic, your guide says, with the air of someone promising mild enlightenment, is potato biodiversity. You try to act excited, you fail. Mainstream science fact. Peru is home to over 4,000 native varieties of potatoes, each adapted to different microclimates, altitudes, and soil conditions. These aren't just color variations. Many have unique shapes, textures, and even chemical compositions that affect taste, storage, and resilience. At the village, a woman named Catalina greets you with a woven basket the size of a satellite dish. Inside, purple potatoes, yellow ones, some that look like squiggly caterpillars, others that resemble jagged stones. You pick one up and whisper, "Are you a root or a curse?" Catalina smiles knowingly. "That one's for headaches." And just like that, you're in the realm of ethnobotany, the science of how humans use plants culturally, spiritually, and medicinally. Around here, potatoes aren't just food. They're medicine, omen, and sometimes friend. Quirky tidbit. In certain Andean rituals, potatoes are read like tarot cards. A farmer might roll a handful across a cloth and interpret their patterns to make decisions, planning dates, marriage prospects, or whether to trust that traveling salesman who smells like burnt sugar. You visit a community seed vault, a cool, earthen room filled with ceramic jars and annotated photos. The villagers don't rely on a digital database or high-tech sensors. They rely on memory, oral storytelling, pattern recognition. If someone forgets a variety's name, another steps in. If a jar's missing, someone else knows where it's been lent. Scientists still argue whether this qualifies as a scientific system. It lacks standardization, peer review, or control groups, but it tracks lineage, adapts to pests, and sustains communities. One researcher even called it genetic jazz, improvised but deeply harmonious. You try sorting a few tubers by size and color, you get it wrong. Repeatedly, you're politely asked to observe instead. Later, Catalina takes you to a small ceremonial field where she grows a variety called pumacara, jaguar skin. It's black-spotted, oddly fierce-looking, and said to be harvested only during a waning moon. Why, Noma, you ask? She shrugs. It misbehaves otherwise. You don't press further. As the sun lowers behind the ridge, the villagers gather for what seems to be a mini festival. There's music, fermented corn drink, and, of course, potatoes in every imaginable form, mashed, boiled, baked in clay, dipped in salty cheese sauce, and dyed bright pink with cochineal. You eat until your waistband protests. Then you dance until your thighs file a complaint. And somewhere in that blur of music, food, and laughter, it hits you. This is biodiversity, not as a scientific concept, but as life. It's not preserved in glass tubes or frozen in vaults. It's sung, chewed, planted, argued over, It's how a community remembers what's worth keeping. You think about monocultures, industrial farms, and that one time your grocery store ran out of Yukon Golds and you had an existential crisis in aisle 4. And then you look at Catalina, holding a potato shaped like a crescent moon, smiling like she knows something you don't. She probably does. You wake up to a potato altar. No, seriously. There in the corner of your host's kitchen sits a small wooden table draped in woven cloth with 5 carefully arranged potatoes, each with a candle beside it, a sprinkle of cornmeal, and a tiny hand-drawn symbol beneath. You assume it's either a blessing, a harvest ritual, or possibly just very committed produce organization. Your host sees your confused expression and nods solemnly. Today is for the appas. You nod back. You have no idea what that means. Mainstream science fact: apus are the spirit guardians of the mountains in Andean cosmology. Many indigenous farmers still hold ceremonies to honor them, offering coca leaves, chicha, fermented corn beer, and yes, potatoes as part of agrarian spiritual practice. It's an intricate blend of agriculture and belief that dates back centuries, long before European colonization. Outside, a group of villagers gathers near a flat stone with ashes from yesterday's fire still smoldering. They're dressed in their best: bright shawls, silver jewelry, and broad hats with handmade pom-poms that bounce as they move. It's not a festival exactly, but it carries that energy, a kind of quiet reverence mixed with the casual chatter of people who've been through dozens of these. One man places a potato on the stone and mutters something into the wind. Another sprinkles cornmeal in a wide arc, as if drawing a circle the mountain will understand. You whisper to your guide, "Is this symbolic?" He replies, "It's practical." You blink. He explains, "If the apus are pleased, the weather behaves. The pests stay away. The frost comes on time, not early. And if they're not pleased, well, best to stay on their good side either way." Think of it as agrarian insurance. Fringe tidbit: some researchers believe these rituals act as a form of decentralized climate management, psychologically preparing farmers for variability, building community resilience, and promoting sustainable land use. There's no weather app out here, just instincts, stories, and a sacred rock that hasn't moved in 600 years. Scientists still argue whether faith-based agricultural rituals improve crop yield, but many agree that these practices boost morale, encourage biodiversity, and strengthen intergenerational knowledge. Things often left out of academic yield charts. You're invited to participate. You accept with the wide-eyed panic of someone trying not to offend a divine volcano. You choose a potato, the smoothest obviously, place it down, and whisper something vague but respectful. Possibly a thank you, possibly a weather complaint. It's unclear. The elder smiles. Later, over a bowl of steaming potato stew, you're told about the uiwa, spirit potatoes chosen at planting time. These aren't eaten. They're cared for, almost like pets, and reburied at the end of harvest to ensure next year's crop grows with good memory. You pause your chewing. So yes, in this village, a potato might have a soul, or at least a reputation. That night, back in your little room, you place the last piece of your boiled potato on a napkin and set it gently on the windowsill. Just in case. You're standing on a perfectly symmetrical staircase built into the side of a mountain. Except it's not a staircase, it's a farm, and also somehow a timeline. Your boots crunch gently against the ancient stone as you step down one level, then another. Each terrace is its own little world. Soil, crops, drainage channels, and temperature, all slightly different from the one above or below. 1,000 years old and still irrigated better than your apartment sink. Welcome to Murray, mainstream science fact. Moray is an Incan archaeological site in the Sacred Valley of Peru, believed to be an agricultural research station. Its concentric terraces vary in elevation and temperature by several degrees, allowing ancient farmers to simulate and test crop conditions for different altitudes and climates. Yes, you heard right. The Incas were running multivariable farming experiments before the metric system even existed. As you descend farther into the structure, the air actually changes. It's warmer here, protected by the terraced walls that absorb and retain solar heat. Each ring functions like a microclimate incubator, and it's not random. Soil was transported here from dozens of regions. Seeds were rotated, rain was redirected. You mutter, these people built a data center out of dirt. No one corrects you. Quirky detail. Some terraces may have been used to train potatoes to adapt to different altitudes, essentially stress testing the tubers before sending them off to harsher landscapes. It's selective breeding with a spreadsheet made of sun and stone. Your guide pulls out a gnarled, knobby potato, almost black with tiny purple veins, and says, "This one comes from 3,800 meters. Then she holds up a smooth golden one. This one only grows at 2,600. You resist the urge to give them voices and make them argue about altitude snobbery. Scientists still argue whether Moray was purely experimental, ceremonial, or a hybrid of both. Some say it doubled as a calendar, others think it served as a seed sanctuary. The more they study it, the deeper the mystery gets, which is exactly the kind of puzzle that pairs well with chamomile tea and ambient flute music. You sit at the bottom of the pit. A hawk circles overhead. A couple nearby is whispering, probably about the logistics of getting Wi-Fi here. You take out a notebook, draw a crude potato. Right, best crop R&D lab ever built. Then you underline it twice because frankly, you mean it. There's a small animal sniffing your shoe. You look down to see a guinea pig, fluffy, unbothered, and completely in charge of the situation. It squeaks once like it's conducting an inspection. You freeze. This may or may not be a sacred moment. The woman beside you, barefoot, in a green shawl, gently scoops the guinea pig up and cradles it like a baby. Then she motions for you to follow her into a stone-walled courtyard where dozens more guinea pigs shuffle, squeak, and nap in the corners like furry little high priests. Mainstream science fact. In the Andes, guinea pigs, kwai, aren't just pets or protein. They're central to ritualistic agriculture and medicine. Farmers have long used them in spiritual diagnostics, fertility rites, and crop blessing ceremonies. Tonight, you're attending one such ceremony. It begins with coca leaves, always. You chew them politely, even though your mouth now tastes like damp lawn and regret. Then come the instruments, a pan flute, a hollow drum, and a conch shell that somehow makes your bones vibrate. The music swirls. A few men scatter flower petals. A child sprinkles chicha around the potato rows like it's holy Gatorade. And then, yes, the guinea pig is carried around the field in a slow clockwise spiral. It's bizarre. It's hypnotic. It's oddly moving. Fringe tidbit. In traditional belief, a guinea pig can absorb negative energy from the land or from people. It's later examined for anomalies like spiritual MRI scans, except fluffier and with more squeaking. Scientists still argue whether these ceremonies do anything measurable for crops, but they often concede that rituals boost morale, reduce stress, and promote intentional farming, things modern agribusiness occasionally forgets in favor of tractor size and spreadsheet margins. You're handed a potato. It's warm from the sun, not the fire. You're told to whisper into it. Your hopes for the season, your respect for the land, your favorite kind of mash preparation, whatever feels right. So yeah, you talk to a potato, And honestly, it listens. Later, after the final dance, the villagers gather to eat roasted kai, toasted corn, and, you guessed it, every variation of potato imaginable. There's laughter, second servings, and the unmistakable comfort of community, bonded not by contracts, but by cycles, traditions, and shared soil. You wonder what kind of world it would be if every field required a blessing, if every meal started with ceremony, if every harvest meant more than yield. And as the night wraps up and the stars flood the sky in pixelated precision, you make a promise to yourself. Never underestimate the power of a rodent-led ritual. This morning begins with a thump. You flinch, your host chuckles, another thump. You open the window and peer outside. It's potato sorting day, which, if you're new here, sounds about as thrilling as watching paint dry underwater. But outside your window, it's chaos, in the calmest, most Peruvian way imaginable. There are mountains of potatoes everywhere. Yellow ones, purple ones, ones that look like lumpy hearts, ones that seem designed by a child trying to draw a dinosaur. A dozen people, mostly women in bowler hats and neon shawls, are sitting cross-legged, sorting them into piles like they're handling fine jewelry or sacred relics. And in a way they are. Mainstream science fact: Peru is home to over 4,000 documented varieties of native potatoes, each adapted to different climates, soils, and elevations. This biodiversity is actively maintained by farming communities, not in a lab, but through daily life, tradition, and meticulous sorting. You step outside and sit beside a woman named Pilar. She doesn't ask your name. She hands you a potato that looks like a starfish and says, "This one is only good for chuño." You nod like you've known this all your life. Chuño, you later learn, is not a mythical creature or a type of potato wizardry, though it honestly might as well be. It's a process, a preservation technique, a way to turn a humble spud into something that can survive for decades. Here's how it works. You freeze the potatoes at high altitude. No fridge needed, just crisp night air. Then during the day you stomp them. Yes, stomp, with bare feet. Then you let them freeze again. Then you wash them in a cold stream. Then freeze again, stomp again. You get the idea. It's part drying, part fermentation, part unspoken magic. Quirky tidbit: some chuño makers believe that how you stomp, the rhythm, your intent, even your mood, affects the final flavor. Grumpy stompers make bitter chuño. Joyful stompers, perfectly earthy. You watch as families separate potatoes into eating now, planting later, and chuño batches. The rhythm is instinctive, like a shared song. And every once in a while, someone tosses a deformed potato into a pile called los traviesos, the mischievous ones. These won't be planted. They're too wild, too unpredictable, but they're kept, just in case the world ever needs a surprise. Scientists still argue whether this community curation counts as formal genetic stewardship, but it's undeniable. These women are managing thousands of years of agricultural memory, with nothing but fingers, eyes, and stories. A little girl taps your shoulder. She hands you a potato with 3 eyes and a tail. You cradle it gently. You are now the keeper of one mischievous spud. Congratulations. You're lost in a fog, literally. Thin, chilly mist swirls around your boots as you hike a path carved precariously along a cliffside. Somewhere below, a stream burbles in that lazy, half-interested way water does when it knows you're not paying attention. Above you, clouds drag across the jagged Andean peaks like they've got nowhere urgent to be. You're on your way to see a mountain that grows potatoes. But not like a normal mountain. No, this one is a calendar. Mainstream scientific fact. In several Andean communities, farmers use eco-indicators, natural signs like cloud patterns, flower blooms, and animal migrations, to forecast agricultural cycles. Some communities even treat entire mountain slopes like seasonal clocks, planting according to when the snow line melts or where shadow patterns fall. This particular slope, your guide explains between gaffes, tells us when to plant. No sundials, no almanacs, just centuries of squinting at mist and noticing when one oddly shaped rock starts collecting dew earlier than usual. You pause and stare at a seemingly unremarkable outcrop. It's wet, that's all. But your guide grins and says, "That means rain comes soon." You nod solemnly. You have no idea what's going on, but somehow it feels truer than any forecast you've ever seen on your phone. Fringe tidbit. Some researchers believe this kind of indigenous forecasting, called phenological observation, is more accurate in high-altitude microclimate areas than modern meteorology, especially when done by elders who've tracked patterns for decades. Their memories act as climate databases, minus the hard drive. As you climb higher, you see the outlines of amunas, ancient stone canals carved by pre-Incan civilizations to capture glacier melt and slowly release it to crops through months of drought. No valves, no pumps, just gravity and patient rock placement. It's water engineering with a spiritual twist. Scientists still argue whether the Amuna system is scalable for modern agriculture, but conservationists are paying attention. In an era of climate instability, these ancient low-tech infrastructures are suddenly trendy, like vintage jeans, but for water. You sit on a rock and let the silence settle. Well, mostly silence. There's the occasional honk from an extremely offended llama. Also your breath, still too fast. These lungs were built for sea level and afternoon naps. The clouds part briefly, and the slope ahead is visible. Terraced steps like a green circuit board wired into the mountain's body. You swear it hums with old knowledge, like a giant, sleepy librarian. You touch the soil beside you. It's cold, damp, alive. And for a moment you think, this isn't farming. This is listening. You wake up to the smell of ashes and starch. Outside your small adobe room, people are already gathered, wrapping potatoes in banana leaves, tucking herbs between them, and gently lowering the bundles into a pit filled with hot stones. No one is in a rush. The sun is still stretching its arms across the hills. You've arrived at a pachamanca. Mainstream science fact. Pachamanca is an ancient Andean cooking method that literally means earth pot. Using heated rocks, farmers cook potatoes, meat, and vegetables underground, a process that both preserves nutrients and infuses everything with the smoky aroma of volcanic stone. You sit cross-legged, watching the stones hiss and steam. A boy hands you a cup of warm chicha de llora, a fermented corn drink that tastes like someone carbonated history itself. It's sour, slightly funky, but strangely comforting, like kombucha's older, wiser cousin. Around you, people chat about crops, sheep, and dreams they had last night. No phones, no spreadsheets, just low murmurs and smoke drifting into the morning light. Then someone points to the sky, and there it is. The Apus, those sacred peaks glowing faintly pink in the dawn. A reminder that farming here isn't just science, it's cosmic collaboration. Fringe tidbit. Some communities still ask the mountains for permission before planting. Not metaphorically, literally. Offerings are buried. Chants are whispered. Coca leaves are read like tarot cards. It's farming with an open line to the divine, and the dial tone never cuts out. You glance at the pit. It's covered now, like a secret being kept warm. And suddenly the word harvest feels too cold, too Western, too focused on output. Here it's not just about what the land gives, but how you ask. Scientists still argue whether these rituals offer measurable benefits to yield or soil health, but studies do show that rituals reinforce sustainability, foster deep environmental awareness, and reduce overfarming. Turns out gratitude is an agricultural strategy. Someone uncovers the pachamanca. Steam spills out like a whispered story. The scent makes your stomach forget all modern etiquette. You eat with your hands. The potatoes are soft, earthy, and absurdly flavorful, like they have been simmering in folklore instead of broth. You lean back, belly full, dirt on your knees, and realize you've just been fed by a mountain, and it knew exactly what you needed. Your shoes are caked in mud. Your phone's been dead for days, and you've officially forgotten how to check your email. Congratulations, you've fully integrated. You're walking now through a patchwork of highland fields, each square a different shade of green, brown, or gold. The air smells like wet moss and wood smoke. Somewhere in the distance, someone is playing a flute. It's slightly out of tune and completely perfect. You pass a sign. It's hand-painted and lopsided, nailed to a wooden post. It says Centro de Conservación de Papas Nativas, Native Potato Conservation Center. Mainstream science fact: Peru has potato sanctuaries. These are real government-supported living gene banks where indigenous communities actively grow and protect native potato varieties, not in a freezer, but in actual soil. You're welcomed by an elderly woman with braids like twisted rope and a smile that could thaw glaciers. She introduces you to her garden the way someone might introduce a room full of dear friends. This one cures headaches, that one's only for fiestas. This one's a bit moody, but we love her anyway. She means the potatoes. Each row is labeled not just by species, but by nickname. Little Finger, Moon Eater, Fox Tooth. It's hard to believe these aren't fantasy creatures. Some look like crayons, others like fossilized gumdrops. A few resemble actual toes, which is deeply unfortunate. Fringe tidbit. Some farmers say certain potatoes sing when you dig them up. Not literal notes, but a feeling, a vibration in the hands, a texture in the silence. Harvest enough seasons and you'll know the song. You help water the seedlings, the hose leaks, your pant leg is soaked, no one cares. Scientists still argue whether this system, where memory and myth intermingle, is the best way to preserve biodiversity. But here the potatoes aren't samples, they're family. And you don't file your grandma in a lab drawer. You sit under a tree. A teenage boy shows you his drawing notebook. Every page is a potato, some smiling, some with wings. One is a superhero. You ask if he wants to be a scientist. He shrugs. Maybe, or maybe just someone who remembers. Later, the elder offers you a cloth pouch filled with tiny, knobbly potatoes. For the road, she says. You ask how long they'll last. She winks. Longer than you think. You're standing on a ridge now, looking down at a tapestry so vast it seems to go on forever. Terrace slopes stitched into the mountain's flesh, fields rippling like fabric in the wind, and tiny specks of color where people bend, dig, plant. This is where it all connects. Mainstream scientific fact. The Andean potato system is considered one of the most complex agricultural networks in human history, combining crop diversity, soil management, climate adaptation, and community governance into a self-sustaining, evolving landscape. But it didn't happen overnight. Generations built it, one knuckle, one basket, one moonlit stomp at a time, and you somehow became part of it. You remember the grandmother with the naming garden? The teenager drawing heroic potatoes? The woman sorting star-shaped tubers like sacred puzzle pieces? You think about how knowledge here isn't uploaded. It's woven, carried in gestures, embedded in jokes, pass through tea and eye contact. Fringe tidbit. Some elders claim they can predict a year's potato mood based on how guinea pigs sleep during the first full moon in August. You raise an eyebrow, but then remember how often your phone misjudges the weather, and maybe the guinea pigs are onto something. Below, a young couple dances between furrows, not for a party, just for the rhythm of it. One plants, the other turns the soil. They move like old music. Scientists still argue whether the ancient Incan and pre-Incan farming systems can guide our future in a climate change world. But global researchers, NGOs, and food security experts are now paying attention. Andean farmers aren't relics. They're guardians of resilient design, masters of microadaptation, artists of the edible. You glance up. Even the mountain seems to nod. Wind carries the scent of something baking, maybe chuño, maybe fresh bread, maybe memory itself. You smile. It's time to leave. But first, let yourself settle. You lie back on a patch of sun-warmed grass, arms behind your head, boots untied and half buried in soft loam. The sky stretches overhead like a quiet sea, pale blue and endlessly patient. A humming insect hovers nearby, then drifts away like it forgot what it was doing. Your heartbeat slows. You listen to the breeze rustle through potato leaves. You didn't think they'd make a sound, but they do. Like silk brushing silk, a barely there hush. Everything around you moves slowly, intentionally, like the mountain is breathing, and you're just a part of its exhale. In the distance, someone laughs, not loud, just enough to remind you this world is full of life, soft, unassuming, and stubbornly beautiful. The ground cradles you, the air hums with warmth. You let go of the need to remember everything. You've been told the story. You've seen the gardens. You've held the star-like tubers in your hand. You know the mountain. And maybe, just maybe, it knows you now too. You close your eyes. Sleep arrives like a gentle harvest, unrushed, abundant, and quietly triumphant.